James Bond is one of the most famous fictional spies in history. But what if I told you he wasn't entirely fictional? Ian Fleming, the creator of Bond, once admitted that his suave, daring secret agent was inspired in part by a real man. That man was Dusko Popov, a Serbian playboy who lived fast, loved danger, and worked as a double agent during the Second World War. Popov's life was filled with casinos, women, high-stakes gambling, and espionage. In other words, he was James Bond before James Bond ever existed. Dusko Popov was born in 1912 in Titel, a town in what was then Austria-Hungary and is now Serbia. He grew up in a wealthy family, and from a young age he lived in luxury. He was smart, fluent in several languages, and had a rebellious streak that got him into trouble more than once. By the time he was a student, he was known for his charm, sharp wit, and love of fast living. These traits would later serve him well in the shadowy world of espionage. In the late 1930s, as Europe edged closer to war, Popov was living in Germany, studying law. His outspoken criticism of the Nazi regime drew the attention of the Gestapo, who briefly arrested him. This was an early sign of the dangerous path his life would take. But Popov had friends in high places, and one of them introduced him to German intelligence, the Abwehr. The Germans saw potential in him. A wealthy, well-educated man with international connections. They recruited him as a spy. But here's where Popov's story takes its first twist. From the start, he had no intention of being loyal to Germany. He despised the Nazis. As soon as he was recruited, he offered his services to Britain's MI5. The British saw an opportunity and accepted. Just like that, Popov became a double agent. Working as a double agent was dangerous beyond measure. Popov had to carefully play his role as a German spy while secretly feeding information to the British. The Germans believed he was one of their most valuable assets. Meanwhile, MI5 used him as part of their deception campaigns, passing along carefully crafted misinformation that would mislead Hitler and his generals. Popov's codename with MI5 was Tricycle, supposedly because he managed 3 German agents at once. But his life was anything but steady. He moved between countries, living a life of luxury to keep up appearances. He spent time in London, Lisbon, and even the United States, always surrounded by glamorous parties, expensive suits, and beautiful women. He was a natural at blending charm with espionage. One of the most famous episodes in Popov's life happened at a casino in Estoril, Portugal. It was 1941, and Portugal was neutral territory where spies from both sides often mingled. Popov walked into the casino and placed massive bets at the baccarat table, calmly pushing sums that most people wouldn't dream of risking. In the crowd that night was Ian Fleming, then a British naval intelligence officer. Fleming was captivated by Popov's audacity. Years later, he would recreate that exact scene in Casino Royale, the first James Bond novel. But Popov wasn't just a playboy. He was an effective agent who provided the British with valuable intelligence while feeding lies to the Germans. One of his most significant roles came during the preparations for D-Day. Just like Agent Garbo, Popov was part of the Allied effort to convince Germany that the invasion would happen at Pas-de-Calais instead of Normandy. Through his reports, he reinforced the deception that kept German forces pinned in the wrong place, giving the Allies the upper hand. Popov also had brushes with danger that could have ended his career and his life. At one point, the FBI in the United States grew suspicious of him. J. Edgar Hoover, the head of the FBI, distrusted Popov and nearly exposed him. The British had to intervene to protect their agent. It was a close call that shows how precarious his double life truly was. Despite the risks, Popov survived the war. His contributions, though not as famous as some other spies, were critical. He helped shape deception strategies, reinforced Allied successes, and undermined German confidence in their intelligence network. And he did it all while living a life that seemed ripped from the pages of a thriller. After the war, Popov's life quieted down, at least compared to his wartime adventures. He returned to private business, moving between Europe and South America. For years, much of his story remained unknown to the public. It wasn't until later in life, and after Fleming's novels made James Bond a household name, that Popov's identity as one of the inspirations became widely discussed. So, was Dusko Popov really James Bond? Not exactly. James Bond is, of course, a fictional exaggeration. But the elements are there: the gambling, the women, the effortless charm, the daring under pressure, and most importantly, the secret work as a spy who risked his life for his country. Fleming took inspiration from men like Popov and built them into a larger-than-life character. Today, historians agree that Dusko Popov was one of the real-life figures who helped inspire 007. He wasn't the only one, but his story stands out because he so clearly embodied the lifestyle and charisma that Bond became famous for. If anything, Popov's real story proves that sometimes, reality is just as thrilling as fiction. Dusko Popov, the Serbian playboy turned double agent, lived a life of danger, luxury, and espionage. He tricked the Nazis, worked for the Allies, and inspired one of the most enduring characters in modern culture. The world may remember James Bond as fiction, but behind the fiction lies a man whose true adventures helped shape the legend. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more fascinating tales from history. From forgotten battles to secret agents, there's always more to uncover.